This is Dune Talk, a DuneNewsNet.com production. Join us now for the latest Dune news, reactions, and lively discussions.
Hello, everybody. We are just 1 week away from the world premiere of Dune. Really excited to be here with the full crew again and just talk about all the latest movie news, as well as the future of Dune on the big screen. So this is Marcus Gabriel speaking, and I'm here today with Simon.
Hello. Also, pumpkin spice is out at Starbucks, so the spice is flowing. Everything is good in the world. 1 week away.
And hello, Garin.
Hey, it's Garin from Dune Companion. Good to see you again.
And we're here with Johnny again.
Yes, sir. Good to be back. Good to be back. Can't believe we're 1 week away, man. I can't believe it.
Yeah, it's going fast. And this time next week, we're going to be hearing all those reviews coming out of the Venice Film Festival. It's going to be, really a lot to dig into. And so I mentioned we're going to go into a bunch of movie news today. And one of our main topics today is going to be the future of Dune on the big screen. So we'll be covering a couple of interesting comments related to that. So without further ado, let's go into some Dune movie news.
Dune movie news.
Our first story today is the interview of Denis Villeneuve had with two interviews actually with La Presse and CBC Radio Canada, so Canadian media outlets. The interviews were carried out in French, and he covered a huge amount of topics in those interviews. So we're going to go through some of them today, but like if you haven't had a chance to read the full interviews yourself, I've done a report on the website going through most of the key points, as well as we have the subtitled video, like 5 minutes with Denis Villeneuve in the bottom with the CBC Radio Canada. And like if you speak French, definitely look at the original interviews because there's a lot more in there. So the first thing that I wanted to talk about that stuck out in this interview was Dune Part 2. So we had already discussed that last week, that the director basically had the comments, this isn't about Dune 1 and Dune 2, this is about Dune Part 1 and Dune Part 2, and really enthusiastic about coming back to film the second half basically of the movie. So he gave a more detailed status update. So I'll just read like just a section of it. So he's saying, I'm currently working on writing the treatment that we must present to the beneficiaries of Frank Herbert. I also have an excellent relationship with his son, Brian. Then everything will depend on the reception that the first film will receive. When I shot it, I was well aware of it all and really enjoyed myself. I told myself that if ever the adventure had to end there, I would be satisfied part of my dream, satisfied part of my desire. And then he goes on, since the studios love the film a lot and are proud of it, I think it would have to go really badly for the second part not to get the green light. But it remains in the order of possible. In December, we should know. So Johnny, let me ask you first. What are your reactions to these comments?
Yeah, it's a continuation of what we had heard previously to a degree, but I do think he's kind of elaborating a little bit more and kind of like showing more of his hand at this point, just because we are getting closer and they're in the middle of promoting the film and getting ready for the film festivals. But it's exciting. I think it's encouraging. The more that they talk about it, the more it seems like, I think the fans are getting more excited and more willing to like really support this thing, especially if like the reviews are really good, next week and then going into TIFF the week after that. I think people will be even more, galvanized and excited and willing to go out and watch it in theaters or watch on HBO Max or what have you. The more I hear about his vision and like kind of where he's at in the creative process and just his kind of feelings about it overall, I think it's encouraging in that respect too, because I think he's taking the right approach. And this was something he had said in, I want to say it was the Empire magazine spread like last summer. He had a quote basically to the effect of, you know, if this is the only movie I get to make, you know, at least I got to like make this one. And I remember reading that last year and, you know, feeling a way about it and like hearing it now and kind of thinking about that still. Because I know there are a lot of people stressed out about just getting one movie, never getting a you know, part two or getting even a third one. And I think everyone's kind of worried about that, the fans most especially, but, you know, including myself, like there's no doubt. But at the end of the day, I think, you know, we kind of have to just sit back, control what we can control, which is supporting the movie. You know, if you want to, if you're, you know, happy with the final product and all that, and let the chips fall where they may. You know, don't get too stressed out or too like invested, because, you know, there's no reason that we should be more, you know, stressed out than Denis is, and Denis seems to be kind of at peace with it. So I think if he's at peace with it, we can all kind of be at peace with it. You know, whether or not we get part two, whether or not we get a third film after that. I think it's all kind of gravy, just because I am feeling so good about this part one at this point. I am really bullish on it. So fingers crossed.
Yeah, and before we let the others chime in, I wanted to touch on the comment that he made. Like, assuming we do get the go ahead and they're going to move forward with this, he also mentioned in that same interview that they could realistically start filming as early as fall of 2022. What do you make of that comment?
Yeah, that seems pretty much on par with what I kind of would have expected, just because they have been done with the movie for so long at this point due to the pandemic related delays. If he is really in the process of, you know, writing the screenplay, there's no reason why, you know, especially if they finish it or like have like significant drafts done of it in the next few months, like, you know, going toward the end of the year when he's not busy promoting the movie. Yeah, going into the new year, I think that makes a lot of sense, where they could kind of start really going to pre-production. Because at that point, as he mentioned, December is kind of like a time frame. They would know whether or not they're going to go ahead with part two and make the movie. So once that's decided, I mean, it's just full steam ahead. I think at that point, he has no other obligations. He, you know, he's in on Dune, like he's fully invested. He's not going anywhere, and I think the entire cast and crew that would be involved feels very much the same way. I think that's encouraging, because the sooner you can get him out, the better. Especially with the pandemic, you never know what kind of delays you can come across. But that's really encouraging that they have, you know, he even has an idea of like a time frame of when they could start filming. It's not some complete, you know, unconceived idea.
Yeah, totally. And Simon, I know that you actually read some of the original interview in French, or maybe all of it. What do you make of the tone of his comments?
Well, like I've said before, Denis is the ultimate fanboy. Like, just hearing him talk about it and how it's influenced and impacted his life. This is like his dream project. Like I said before, sometimes you hear directors or actor, oh, I've always wanted to work on this. No, like he's always wanted to work on it. And I agree with Johnny. I'm excited about having a part one. A part two would be amazing, because I don't want it to be that Big Trouble in Little China end sequence scene, and then we never see whatever happens. Because I think that might drive people away from Dune. But if we get part two, at least, we'll be good. Part three would just be icing on the cake. But I think Denis is excited, and the Spider-Man trailer's out. It's doing great. But hey, Spider-Man fans, you should watch Dune. I think that might give her some more like acclaim and awards. Than nothing against MJ. I'm a big Spider-Man fan, but yeah, I'm excited. I love that he wants to do two. I love that he's already thinking about two. He's talking about part three, which would be Messiah. And also, he wants to do a Cleopatra movie. How epic would that be? That in that interview.
Yeah. So, Garin, how do these comments make you feel?
You know, Johnny, you were saying, you know, you're nervous. I'm feeling a lot of anxiety too, because I care so much about this story and this movie. I'll tell you, I'm not only a Dune fan, I've become a huge Denis fan through this whole thing, because I kind of look to him as, okay, how's he feeling? And, you know, what's his mentality around this right now? And so I like how you brought that out, that, you know, he's all in and he feels good about it. And the comment that I really like is where it says, and since the studios love the film a lot and are proud of it, that line right there gave me more peace than just about anything, because Denis could be the biggest fan in the world. All of us on this podcast could be the biggest fans in the world, but I'll tell you, those number crunchers at Warner Brothers, if it doesn't work, we don't get part two. So the fact that he's saying the men in the suits, they're the ones who are proud of this film already, that gives me a lot of comfort. So I love these comments.
Yeah, so I totally agree with you, Garin. Yeah, it's that I think was a big, positive sign. And also he did mention, he mentioned it in the total film piece, I believe, as well, to some degree, and also in this French piece, I think, but talking about the box office situation, which is kind of like the enormous, Shai Hulud in the room, if you will, where like, okay, there's been some bombs, there's been some flops, there's been some, weekend to weekend kind of nosedives. But there's also been some success on streaming. HBO Max is like kind of like hard to gauge what they consider good or not. But I think it is promising that he said what he said, which is that, I mean, and what it was, I don't know if I have been saying this publicly, I might have been saying it to Marcus or like on Discord or on Reddit or whatever, but like it's for the longest time, like especially with the marketing starting back up and like from the IMAX preview and everything, I really came under the impression that I think this would have to be like a cataclysmic, like no one watches this movie kind of failure to justify not making at least part two, just because there have been so many examples and exceptions made, I think, so far with box office success and how you kind of gauge it. I mean, Free Guy, $100 million+ movie, came out and made like under 30, like about $30 million. And everyone was like, woo, like, wow, like we can keep theaters open and alive. And I'm just like, hey, I went and saw it in theaters. Like I was happy to support it. I'll be seeing more movies, between now and Dune, of course. But I think that's a good sign. And I think the media is also starting to take that kind of vantage point as well. I've seen people calling it out, like, actual, journalists and check marks on Twitter and everything. Like, let's relax with the box office, like talk, and like, let's focus on the movie and just let everything else kind of fall where it may. And also, talking about this article in part 3, I think that is also encouraging, where he feels, as you mentioned, he is the biggest fan, I think. And I think that his feelings towards the studio have become apparent, both good and bad, over the last year or so. There was the big Variety news, the letter he wrote saying that he was super unhappy with Warner Brothers. And then he did talk about in this interview where he said, I feel very positive toward them now, and they have he hasn't come outright and said, we're doing this, like we're going to make another movie, but the way he's talked about the box office situation, the way he's talked about his relationship with Warner's now, and he mentioned the marketing, he said they're all in on that. They've been really supportive in that respect. I'm really happy with that campaign. And we've seen that. I mean, that we've been witness to that over the last month. I think that's really promising as well, and more reason to be optimistic.
Yeah, totally. And let's stay on that topic for a minute in terms of the future of Dune. So for the listeners, basically what we're talking about, he said this to both Total Film and also to CDC Radio Canada about potentially a Dune trilogy. Again, this is thinking really long term, but basically he said there is the second book in the Dune series by Frank Herbert, which is Dune Messiah, and this could make an extraordinary film. I always saw that there could be a trilogy. After that, we'll see. It's years of work, and I can't think of going further than that. So we had heard before, like even a couple of years back, about the speculation that originally this was always meant as a trilogy, but to hear the director himself see it as just like really exciting. I think that this was one of the most exciting things coming out of the article for me, simply because like the story of Dune, like talking about the first Dune book and then what's going to be covered in these movies, Dune Part 1 and Dune Part 2. It's an amazing story. It talks about the hero's journey and hints at a lot more stuff that's going on underneath that. But the real completion of that story is Dune Messiah, and like that's why if anybody who I've talked to in the past, they say, oh yeah, I also read Dune, and I always recommend just keep on reading, because there's so much to get into there. So just like knowing that he wants to continue this story afterwards, just really excited about it. Garin, what did you think about these comments?
Yeah, so the fact that that Denis is even thinking that far ahead just shows me that this is a man of vision who can make things happen, right? To be able to take this unadaptable story and put it on film. And I know we haven't seen it yet, but we've seen enough to know that his vision is unprecedented. It's amazing. So the fact that he's talking about Dune Messiah, what I get excited about with that is the fact that, and without any spoilers, I won't do that here, but it's unexpected. The way that story goes is unique. It's refreshing. It's surprising even, but it goes along with the overall story of who is Paul Atreides. And so the fact that he's already thinking about that, and he talks about how he would interact with the cast, and they would ask him a question, and he'd say, "Okay, well, let me dream about that tonight, and then I'll answer that tomorrow when I see you." So he's already dreaming about Dune Messiah. And to me, that's super exciting, because this is a guy who sees the whole vision. He understands what Frank Herbert was trying to do here, and he's going to bring it to the big screen in a way that I think is going to translate really well.
So, I mean, how excited are you about the possibility of seeing Dune Messiah on the big screen?
It's the next evolution of Paul, and you need to find out his journey. And for non-Dune fans that haven't read Messiah, I don't think they're going to expect what happens, even just halfway through. You know, I want to say something that I saw on Twitter, but it could be kind of a spoiler. Someone posted like an end. What if Dune Part 2 has an end sequence with someone in a tank and it just fades to black like that right there? I think people would lose, like they would go insane. But yes, we need Messiah to know what happens to Paul. And sure, I would love Children of Dune. I would love a God Emperor. I would love, the original 6. But even if we get 3, that's better than what little Simon thought of when, he started getting into Dune. And I think Denis, he has visions. He sees the future. Maybe he is Paul Atreides. He said in the article that he related to Paul Atreides as a kid. So there you go. I think it's all positive. I'm super happy that people are talking about it. And I know my Twitter feed now has become Dune Talk, but it's been also random people. Like some of you know, I work at Target. The other day I was walking around to the toy aisle because, I do that on my lunch and every break. And our toys are right by the books. And I saw a guy pick up the book, look at it, and told his girlfriend, "Oh, I should read this before the movie comes out." In the back of my head, I'm like, yes, buy it. I will give you my team member discount if you want. Just buy it. And I saw the guy later check out with the book. So I'm like, hopefully he'll pick up the book and actually read it. But it's, again, people that I think are not interested in it. A year ago, I saw something, I think it was Brian Herbert tweeted out today, that on Kindle, it's number 5 or 7 of the top sellers. That's amazing. We didn't have that a year ago. So people are interested and intrigued what Dune is. And I feel like this is our Phantom Menace era. Like, yeah, our fandom can come out. It's nice. And I believe that Denis is he's the only director I would ever imagine doing Dune. I thought about this the other day. I was like, would I want a Stanley Kubrick Dune? No, because it would have been weird. It would have been even weirder than the Jovanovski version. But Denis the man. I believe in Denis.
Yeah, and I just wanted to touch on that stat that you mentioned. So the Amazon chart, like the most read book, so it was number 7 last time I checked. And I'd say that's actually a really important stat, because it's not just people like buying the book and putting it on their to read list, but this is actually showing how much people are engaging. And like if you look at the other books on the list, it's like, for example, Harry Potter that have been on the list for ages, but to see Dune there and it's been on the list for I think over 30 weeks, that's really impressive. And one of the things we need to keep in mind, of course, this is talking long term. So he's mentioned what he said, Simon. He's thinking about doing a project about Cleopatra, which will likely be a smaller film. So that would be likely after Dune Part 2. So basically, he's saying, okay, let me focus now on getting a Part 1 premiered, and then Part 2 will become a priority. And then after that, he wants to do some smaller projects, and then hopefully after then we'll have the go ahead for the Dune Messiah. So this could still be some ways off.
But you know what, Mark, sorry to interrupt, but I love that because it gives the actors time to age also.
Yeah,
That's true, for sure.
Between Messiah and Dune, Paul grows up. Timothy will start looking 20 by the time they do Messiah, and it's great because if they do it in real time, then it will feel like, hey, this wasn't forced, it wasn't over makeup. We're growing with these characters.
Yeah, and John, I was just gonna ask you, like, when you hear those comments, let's just jump into speculation for a moment. I'll hear from all of you. When do you think theoretically we could see this film? Like, say it really happens. Like, how many years do you think we're talking about?
Yeah, Dune Messiah seems like, because I'm thinking, if say everything goes to plan and they make, they start production on part 2 next fall, that seems like it would have to be a 2024 release, 3 years after, part 1. I would say the Dune Messiah, if the part 2 is coming out in 2024, probably wouldn't come out until like 2028, probably. I think would probably be realistic, because if he wanted to go do a smaller movie, he could knock that out in a year, basically, and then get into Messiah mode again. But it would be a decade long from beginning to end. They started filming in 2019. By the time the last movie, if we did a trilogy, comes out, would be almost 2029 probably. So it's definitely strange to think about, but very exciting nonetheless.
I'm also going to go with, like, in the range of 6-7 years. What do you think, Garin?
Yeah, I remember a comment that Denis made, which he was giving credence to Peter Jackson for being able to make all the Lord of the Rings films simultaneously, and he just said it would have killed him, right? and I think there is something superhuman about Peter Jackson that way. I like the way Denis makes his films, because I think he really does pour his thoughtfulness and his analytical mind into making it translate really well. But I think the genius of casting Timothée Chalamet is that Timothy, I think, is in reality like 23 or 24 years old, but those scenes that we saw at the IMAX preview, he literally looked 16 to me. He looked really young. So I think casting someone like that gives you that flexibility. But I think giving it a few years, he would look more mature, because he would be more mature for a Dune Messiah in 2024 or 2028 or 9 or whatever it is for Dune Messiah. So yeah, no, I think it would all work out. It's not Lord of the Rings, all, just 1 year after the other, but that's okay. It's going to be done right, and I'd rather have it be quality than released quickly.
Yeah, and I like that you brought that up, because I know that a lot of people are saying, oh, the biggest mistake of this movie is that they didn't shoot it back to back. But then if you hear his comments, then you know how much work and effort went into this first movie. It's amazing.
Also,
it would have been a nightmare.
Also, Dune Messiah hits 60 years in 2029. I was looking up what year it came out. So there you go. From the marketing point, they can be like a story that took 60 years to come to the big screen. And let's not forget, between Dune, where it's supposed to end, part 1 and part 2, there is some time also. There is a couple years in the story that we don't know what happens. So once again, I'm okay with that time, because our actors age. The original Star Wars didn't come out 3 years in a row. It took a while. So give it time. Peter Jackson, you're a maniac. You're a machine. And thank you for making those movies like that. But Denis, take your time. I believe in you.
Yeah, real quick to that point as well. About Peter Jackson. I think Peter Jackson, I don't know the exact quote or where this was said, if it was. I think he said something to the effect of, like, making those movies as they did, like, definitely, like, took years off his life, like, was detrimental to his health and the health of others probably working on the movies. So that's a good thing to avoid. And then also, like Garin was mentioning, there is a real actual time, lapse that you can take advantage of, but also Chalamet and Zendaya, who would, be by far the two most integral characters in that movie, if they were to make a Messiah movie, are both not only going to grow stronger and more experienced as actors, so their skills are going to be better, because those scenes of Messiah really call for some, dramatic, almost to a theatrical point acting. And not only are they going to grow as performers, but also their profile is going to grow even more. Right now, they're my age, and they're two of the biggest stars in the world. This movie hasn't even come out yet, so I could imagine, Chalamet has Wonka, Zendaya has her own show on HBO, and the Spider-Man franchise. Like, they're gonna get, if you can believe it, even more famous, and noteworthy, and more of a box office draw or streaming draw. So that's another thing that I think would definitely be exciting too, if they did put it back into the future.
Going on in this interview, so Denis actually has some really good clarifications. It's basically, and he actually mentioned himself, like he has an anonymous Twitter account where he's basically following all the news coming in on Twitter. And in this interview, he actually addressed a lot of the big stories that had been making the rounds over the past weeks. So the first thing we'll just touch on quickly, because we covered a lot of that last week, was he gave the clarification on Zendaya's role in Dune Part 2. And I think pretty much what we discussed last week already was taken into account. We pretty much were saying that, there could be something lost in the translation, and that Zendaya was going to be one of the main characters, not taking over as some of the headlines that had mentioned. But basically, Denis was really humble about this. He talked about, I realized my limits with the English language, and he wanted to clarify that he wasn't saying that the second film would focus on her, but she remains one of the main characters, and her role is important. And he also called out that, of course, he praised her skills as an actress that we talked about last week. And he mentioned that even in Part 1, her role had grown. So I thought that was interesting comment. But at the end of the day, like all this big discussion that happened online, he was saying, okay, that's definitely a case of lost in translation. Yeah. So the other clarification that we got, and this was another story that was basically from another interview, where Jason Momoa, we talked about that a couple of weeks ago, about talking about an extended cut of Dune. Like, I want to see Denis' full vision. I want to see a 4 to 6 hour cut of Dune. And Denis basically clarified in this interview that, like, he really appreciates that enthusiasm from Jason Momoa, but basically, like the cut that we're seeing in cinemas, that's the right one. That's the one that we intended to be shown on the big screen. And he also reinforced that he's never done a director's cut of any of his films. Simon, your thoughts?
I mean, once again, I would love a 4, 6, 12, 14 hour cut, whatever. How long's the audiobook? Like 30 hours? Can we get that? And if Denis happy and the studios don't go in full Terry Gilliam Brazil and cut it completely, then we're good. If the filmmaker that had his own vision as a kid now making this movie is happy with it, then I think we'll all be pleasantly happy and surprised. I was talking to someone on the phone the other day about it, and they're like, oh, I think I know what I'm expecting. I'm like, no, you didn't see the IMAX preview. You don't know what you're expecting yet. You're going to be blown away with this movie. So sure, a longer cut would have been nice, but if the story goes well and it floats, then let the spice flow and let the Denis cut flow. I don't know. I was trying to come up with something there.
Garin, are you disappointed at all, or does this make total sense to you?
At first I thought, gosh, if it's such a great experience, why wouldn't I want it to be 4 or 6 hours long? But honestly, I remember seeing the very first Star Wars movie in the theaters as a little kid, and when they went to change that and do all the the new special effects, I hated it because I remembered that first experience, how it was. And I think that's probably how Denis feels. It's like, this is my vision. I'm creating a work of art here, and I don't want it to get manipulated into something that I didn't picture, that I didn't envision at first. And so I kind of respect his ability to create something that he wants to see and share that with the world. And who knows? I mean, if this franchise goes through the ceiling, I mean, there'll be all kinds of derivatives of this stuff, right? That. But for now, I'm not worried, because I want to see it the way Denis wants me to see it, because I trust him.
And Johnny, I think you had tweeted about this in the past, like, no surprise here, right?
Yeah, no, I had tweeted about it because it was right after the Jason Momoa quote came out, and people again were like completely taking it out of context and like making it into something that it really wasn't. And I just tweeted out this quote that Denis had. I think it was in the wake of 2049, which is one of my favorite movies of all time. I've seen that movie more times than probably anyone that wasn't involved in making the movie. And he said specifically when they made that, he was like, "Oh yeah, Joe Walker, the editor, and we had a 4-hour cut, and we actually probably could have broken it up into 2 whole 2-hour movies or so." And to that, I say, okay, yeah, I would watch that, but I don't really need it. Like, I love what I got from that movie. And I feel that same way about this. And I do understand, like, people that love what they love, they want more of it. I mean, that's what we always want, right? Lord of the Rings, I think, is a good example. Those are amazing movies that were supreme successes in every way. And then we got the extended editions, and people still really love those, and some people just swear by those. For me, I understand where he's coming from, like as an artist and as someone, like, he's a sculptor. He's not like a painter, I guess, in that way. Like, once it's gone, it's gone. Like, you can't chisel it off and then glue it back up. Like, that's not how he operates. So I respect that, and I think that's how you get the best final product. I would rather have someone with that viewpoint coming in and working on the movie rather than someone like, not to name names, but some directors who just are like, I'll film 40 hours worth of stuff and then I'll get mad when they want me to cut it down to 2.5 hours, and then, cry victim. Maybe I put out an ultimate cut or a director's edition after the fact to try to build it back up into something that it never was for most people who saw it in theaters. Most movies never have an extended cut. 99% of movies never have an extended cut or a director's cut. The editor is there for a reason. The producers are there for a reason. They help wrangle in some things. And Denis, another quote that he said months ago, I think it was, or even earlier than that, he said, he could be an editor if he wanted to. He said, if I wanted to, I could edit my own movies. If he wasn't a director, he said he would be an editor. The reason he works with Joe Walker is because he loves the collaboration. He loves the elements, the creative viewpoint that Joe Walker brings to the table in chiseling it down, combining things that maybe he wouldn't otherwise consider. And that's such a big part. The editor is the second most important person on any movie. And then a lot of people don't talk about that. They talk about the cinematographer and the producers or the writer, but the edit is where, like, it actually gets made. And I think that's important to keep in mind when these things kind of pop up. And I could listen to him talk about this all day, and how there was another comment where he talked about Apocalypse Now's redux, that's just like a mess. Like, I would never want to watch that based over everything else in like the original cut. So I think it's interesting. And I understand people that want more. Would I watch a 4, 5, 6 hour cut of Dune? Yeah, sure, why not? But I'm glad and feel comfortable knowing that we're getting a 2.5 hour version in theaters on HBO Max. Everyone can see it. There's not going to be any confusion after the fact about what is what. And I think that at the end of the day is what you would probably prefer compared to the alternative.
So one other important clarification that came up. So we've covered that in the site like in the past, and we still have to publish an updated article about that. But we do know that Dune is actually going to be released over a period of 5 weeks in different countries. So it's going to start on September 15th in some European countries. So we know that France and Belgium, for example, are going to get it on the 15th, along with some of the Nordic countries. And then it's going to roll out through the rest of Europe, non-English speaking, in that weekend. Then we'll see in October it goes to some of Latin America, some of Asia, and then on October 22 it services in the US, Canada, UK. And a lot of people have been confused about that approach. And in this interview, it was basically clarified. It was talked about, the pandemic is having an impact, and it's impacting differently in each of those territories. In some territories, there's a congestion of films. And basically the idea was that they wanted to give Dune the possibility to have the best opportunity to have a success in each territory. So they're basically looking at it on a case-by-case basis. So Johnny, I'll stay with you to open this one. Like, what are your thoughts on this unprecedented approach?
Yeah, I mean, it's and to be fair, like it is not unprecedented in the respect that, I mean, this happens with every movie to varying degrees. This, of course, with the pandemic does make it a little bit more complicated. But I mean, Fast 9, F9, which came out in like May. So we were in a little bit better position than we are now with the Delta variant. But like that movie came out, I want to say it was in China, like a month before anywhere else, which is a long time. And then it kind of came out in a couple other places, and then it came out in the US. Day and date releases, global releases, are really pretty rare actually nowadays. I remember back when I was really into the DC comics, like movies and keeping up with that stuff, when that was really getting going, like Batman v Superman. I remember that got like a day and date release, and then it made like $400 million in one day because it was, or in one weekend or whatever, because it all landed at the same time. And that's because those studios, they want those headlines, they want those big receipts all coming in at once, which of course you do. But with this, it makes sense. And then also you have like the word of mouth aspect as well, where it comes out in Germany and France and Mexico and Sweden and Norway and some of those places, and people see it, and then they're like, they go on Twitter and Facebook, and they're like, wow, this movie's so good. And their friends and their families see it, and they're in other countries or places, and then it just kind of spreads. And it's in combination with the film festival appearances as well, which runs through September. I think that's kind of like a good situation to be in. And then of course in the US we have the theaters and HBO Max, which is see it how you want, but it's going to be the same day, October 22nd. And yeah, I think it's just good. The thing is with these, the sooner they can get money coming in, the better. That's going to build confidence with them and make them feel more comfortable. We're not going to be waiting, oh, we're all going to be huddled in our rooms on the strike of midnight on October 22nd, like, oh, is this movie going to be a success? Like, let's get the green light like going here. We're going to have weeks to see how it's doing. Tens of millions of dollars across the world in different countries. That is going to be a good thing, hopefully, and that'll be performing well and overperforming, and that good energy will come into the US, which is of course the biggest market focus right now. And then it did get approved in China, and that'll come after probably the US. But yeah, so there's things to take away from it, but nothing too crazy.
Garin, did you have any concerns on this approach, or are you like, does it make sense what his explanation is?
No, I mean, I think Johnny's right on. I guess it's the pandemic thing that's still kind of creating some anxiety for me, because what I don't want to have happen is have some of these countries that get an early release, have some less than stellar turnouts, right? Because that could affect it, because people are going to tweet immediately. I mean, we're going to know right away what some of the first audience's responses are. So I guess it's not necessarily the method of rolling it out. It's what the impact of some of these areas might be. And I don't know. I'm just going to believe that most of us, we've been doing this pandemic thing long enough. We have to be safe, and I'm glad even Denis even mentioned that our safety is most important. But let's do what it takes to be safe, and let's get in the theaters, because I think we're all ready for it. I mean, at that IMAX preview, I was just relieved to be sitting in a theater, feeling the thunderous sound of the IMAX speakers and the incredible screen. I think we're ready for it, but I'm a little nervous about the pandemic affecting it.
Yeah, and actually, we just heard yesterday that the movie has been delayed in Australia until December 2nd because of the lockdowns that are going on there. So it looks like, I wouldn't be concerned about the other countries, but it does really look like they're looking at it on a country by country basis and taking decisions individually. Simon, any final thoughts on this?
Once again, safety is the most important thing, and wear a mask, be a Fremen, don't be a Harkonnen when you go see it. Sure, I would love that we get to see it in a couple of weeks, but you know what? We're so close and we're so far, so I'm okay waiting a little bit longer, but we are going to get those instant reviews, and it could be a make it or break it. I'm not even worried about piracy. I feel like piracy is such like a mid-90s thing, like early 2000 with BitTorrents. And we're lucky in the US that we have the chance of coming home after seeing it in the theater and turning on our Apple TV or whatever streaming device and watching on HBO Max. Once again, safety is more important than, day, a big hit number day. I'm just safety, and I'm hoping that everything's okay with Delta for many reasons, and also I hope that we still get this in the theater. I hope we don't go in full lockdown again, because that would suck.
Yeah, let's hope that the developments trend positively the next couple of weeks, especially for those international territories, because I know that in Europe they're having some challenges as well in some countries. So yeah, that was yeah, as we saw, there was just so much insights in just these two interviews. So definitely check them out if you haven't already. So let's move on to our second story for today, which is the Total Film Dune themed issue that came out last week Friday. So it's available in stores, physical copy, or you can get it digitally, either directly to their website, or it's available on Amazon through Kindle. So if you haven't had a chance to read that, it's got 20 pages full of Dune content, bunch of new images, interviews. So definitely check it out. So let's do a round table on that. Yeah, I'll start with you, Garin. Did you read the Total Film issue?
Yeah, I did. I thought it was fantastic. I liked that the focus was on Denis himself and his journey with this story. I loved how vulnerable he was about this was a story that he related to as a young person growing up. I'm a lot older than you guys, and I think I'm about 3 years younger than Denis. And so, this must have been the mid early 80s, maybe a little earlier. And so, I understand that this has been a journey for him. This is something that means something to him. And I like that Hans Zimmer quote that you have to be really careful when you're trying to create a dream that's been with you your whole life. I thought that was an interesting comment from him. But boy, this article is in depth. I mean, it goes into each one of the major characters, interviews the actors. I thought I had a lot of great insight into how this came to be, how Denis created this vision and executed on it. And there's just so much. I'm not even sure what to really focus in on, but this is an article that really prepares you well for the movie, because it gives you kind of the background, it gives you the foundation for what this movie means to him and what he wants it to mean to us. So yeah, it's great.
And one of the images I really liked was a photo with Denis Villeneuve and Rebecca Ferguson in the Thopter, and you really felt how the director and the actors, they were really immersed in that environment, like in these enormous sets that they had to put out. So yeah, like I really think that's definitely had a important factor in the acting as well, like being surrounded by all these massive, these realistic ships. So I'm really excited to see those performances. Like, we're as they mentioned, like there were maybe only a couple of screens that were shots that were in front of a green screen. The rest, this was like real shooting in the desert, in these gigantic sets. So it's yeah, I think the comparisons that people have been making, for example, with Lord of the Rings, I think that they're justified, but we'll hopefully see soon.
They had Timothée Chalamet spend 2 weeks practicing in the Thopter, hitting all the controls and everything, so that it would look like he knew how to fly a Thopter. And I thought, okay, that's meticulous. Like, that's going to translate well to feeling realistic on the screen. So it's little details like that I love in this article.
Yeah. Yeah, and Simon, I want to hear, what was your main takeaway from this article?
Once again, it's Denis. I mean, like you said, Denis is just a humble person that I want to be his friend, not just because he's directing Dune. He just seems like a cool guy that you just want to hang out with and talk to and get life lessons from Denis. But I love the article. I love that we had like little character bios in a way on half of the page explaining who this character is. I think it's well designed as an article for fans like us and people that are like, oh, Dune, I keep hearing about it. Maybe I should read this. This is the main story, What should I know about this movie? And yeah, Timothy learning how to fly, that's great. I hope he got his pilot license also. But it's just, I love that it feels like it's shot organically. I mean, out of the four of us kind of have green screen on right now in our Zoom call. So, but it's done practical, and that's something. It's just a simple little touch that makes it feel organic, feel real. And in those 15 minutes, 20 minutes of the IMAX, I was blown away, and I was like, yes, I believe this world exists. I believe this is it. It doesn't feel forced, like, oh, look at that awesome CG shot. That's cool. I wonder how long it took that to render. You know, it feels organic. I said this before, just give me the movie. Stop teasing me. Just give me the movie. And I'm excited about the art and soul of Dune. I still haven't bought my $5,000-$6,000 copy, whatever it was.
Johnny, did you have a favorite segment or image from that piece?
That's tough. I mean, there was some stuff that really stuck out there. We talked earlier about the Peter Jackson comment, and just talking about the process of making it. I really loved hearing the stuff from the craftspeople talking about, well, the costumes was something they hit on, and also you had Jacqueline Walker talking about that, and Bob Morgan. Then you had the Greg Fraser, the cinematographer, and Patrice Vermette, man. I mean, I know the French Dispatch looks really pretty, but like, this guy really needs to be in the convo for like best production design, like throughout the award season and to the Oscars, because everything that I have seen and read about what he was able to pull off is, I mean, again, like the comparisons are endless, but it's Lord of the Rings like level of detail and creation, and it's nuts. And Simon mentioned Art and Soul of Dune. Yeah, like the stuff I've heard and have been told and like seen from that book, like, I mean, it's if you liked this article, it's gonna be this times, like, the length is 10, but the detail and the intricacies is amazing. So I'm really excited for more people to get their hands on that and really dig into it, because I don't think you can really appreciate until you read articles like this, just the amount of detail. I mean, the thought process to, instead of using a blue screen or a green screen for certain scenes that they need to extend the sets and whatnot, let's use a sand colored one. Let's use something else, like pull a color from the environment, just so that the light hits just right and it doesn't seem, Simon's talking about, you're looking at a CG creation or a background or something like that, and you're just like, I mean, you can feel that it's not quite right, or that the lighting on the characters involving that just doesn't, it feels off. And so far, what we've seen in the footage, which has been a lot now to this point, I mean, if I have never felt that way looking at it, and that's the same way I felt on 2049, where you could tell they had some massive set extensions with blue screen or green screen a couple times in that. But it's looking really exciting, and I love how the enthusiasm from all of the actors, of course, as well, especially for a part two. Rebecca Ferguson's comment and Javier Bardem texting Denis is a pretty funny image. And Duncan Idaho, I almost said Jason Momoa as Duncan Idaho, just talking about his potential. That's exciting as well. Talking about what we were earlier without giving anything away. It's really exciting. I think it's the biggest and most detailed expose that we've gotten so far, which is hitting at the right time, and I thought was worth the wait and kind of excitement that we were building up.
Totally, yeah. Don't miss it. So check out the Total Film issue from this month. So let's jump into our third story for today, which is the international trailers that hit just this week.
Oh yeah.
So yeah, I mean, like, between all the different trailers, all these teasers, and like the TV spots, including the one with the Olympics and all that stuff, we've gotten tons of footage from this movie already. So I guess maybe I shouldn't have been surprised, but like, yeah, when we got even more new footage in these international trailers, it was quite impressive. The first trailer that came out was a 1.5 minute trailer from Japan. And of course, you have the very typical voiceover in Japanese, like from the narrator, and really talking about excitement about like it being, like the space war event and all that stuff. And we got some new shots in there as well. So we saw, for example, the Guild Highliner, so we get more of a sense of the scale of that. We see Paul Atreides, like an iconic shot of him like looking up at the Imperium ship coming down. and we got our first glimpse of the planet of Gidi Prime. So I'll start with you, Garin. What did you think about this Japanese trailer?
Yeah, I lived in Korea for about a year, and I just remember the way their announcers use their tone of voice, and he was really hamming it up in that trailer. But I again keep waiting. I'm not expecting to be disappointed, but every time I see a shot, every time I see some image, and I'm kind of obsessed with the ornithopters at the moment, because I can't get over how that design is just so perfect. I wondered if it was going to work at first as kind of a dragonfly thing, because I'm not sure I pictured it quite as a dragonfly when I first read the book as a kid, but it's just brilliant. So every time I see a scene, the Guild Highliner, which is just mind-bogglingly enormous. I don't know if it was you, Johnny, or somebody highlighted how you have to zoom in to see that there's these droplets coming out of that thing, and those are ships. So I thought that was brilliant to catch that. So I just keep getting just floored by these images, and they're just super quick, they're super brief. But even seeing Gidi Prime, I'm like, you nailed it. You know, it doesn't need to be covered in oil. It's a planet that's harsh, and it's dark, and I like the thought that's going into this, and so I'm getting little bits and pieces of this as I watch these trailers. Loved it.
Yeah, Simon, any thoughts on the Japanese one?
I saw this on my lunch break at work. I was like, oh crap, that's out. That's awesome. I knew we were going to get one, but I didn't know one. Giddy Prime looks like what I imagined. You're right. It doesn't have to be super goth, over the top. It just, once again, it feels like, yes, this is a world that lives in organically. This is what it should look like. And the scale of those ships and everything. I like that we're getting more of the dream sequence, maybe. What we think of the golden suit, and I think Johnny, you nailed something when we did our trailer breakdown more and more and more and more. The more I see those clips line up now.
Yeah, that was commenting on it myself. Garin, yeah, you're right. I did point out like the scale, because that was something I feel, we still got a taste of it in the full trailer that has been released to people. And was such a hit like online last month. But like, again, you really can't understand it until like, not to be an elitist here, but if you're sitting in the theater and like it's on a huge screen, like, I mean, that preview we saw was just like unbelievable. And I told people and have been telling people, to this point, you still don't get it. Like, you have not really seen it yet. And I think so far that shot is probably the best indicator and like the best example. And that's exactly what I tweeted. And people were just losing their minds over it. So I thought that was a lot of fun, because that's like just a taste of what we're talking about. And I love the space, the space shots. I'm always a sucker for those. I love, movies like Interstellar in 2001, and just what you can do with like the scale. The effects look unreal. There's the shot, Getty Prime, as we've been talking about, like from orbit, with all the Harkonnen ships just kind of floating, and it looks, it looks lifeless. I mean, it looks just, miserable, and like there's not a green or blue speck in sight. And I'm very excited to see, some aerial shots like of the planet and like the landscapes, because I think that's going to be something pretty special. Because what we've seen so far of other places, like whether it's Caladan or Arrakis or just the art and the footage that they've been able to pull off, like I cannot wait to see what they do with that planet. We're gonna be talking about the Norwegian stuff here in a second, but yeah, I was super happy with it, and I think it's gotten people just even more buzz. And I had many people responding to that tweet, and so I'm glad more and more people are kind of catching on. And I think it's really cool too that, I mean, this was it was tweeted by the Japanese Twitter account. Like, we're getting like legit stuff straight from WB, but just in other markets, which I think is great, because you're hitting those other markets. And the fact that, so many people in the US are seeing it and enjoying it, I think is also saying something as well. Because I don't remember really in a lot of other countries when they release specific things that they really migrate over, and they are showing new stuff as well, which I think makes a big difference too.
Oh, Johnny, I think another reason, and when you highlighted that image of the Guild Highliner, it struck me that I remember. I don't know if it was this Total Film article or if it was another article where Denis actually said the design of all these ships was made to be so enormous that
Oh yeah.
it makes the people and the viewer feel small, right? So that
Mhm.
they're filled with this sense of awe and maybe even, you know, some sense of foreboding or something. But
Yeah,
that's why he wants us to see this on an IMAX screen. It's not, like I've said before, it's not a marketing ploy. It's that he designed it to be so big that
Right.
we're sitting there in our seat and we're feeling like the ship is a mile high in front of us, and that's the kind of experience he's trying to create. So yeah, I guess, Simon, it's fun that you can go home after you've seen it on the IMAX screen and watch it on HBO Max, but I think he doesn't want it to be the reverse. I think he doesn't want us to see it first on even a 60-inch screen, because you're not going to feel that feeling he's trying to instill in us. So anyway, I think that's his purpose in designing those ships that way.
Yeah, no, it's really well done. And to Garen's point, last thing, the exact quote, because it was actually in the Italian article that had been
Oh, yeah.
translated, but it said, "I wanted spaceships that looked like monoliths and were giant. I like the idea that architecture and transportation can make humans look like humble ants." And I can just hear him saying it in his accent. So the machines in Dune were built with this monumental feeling of loneliness and oppression toward their users, which again, that's something he's done in other movies as well. I mean, going back even to Enemy, which is a Canadian art house film. I mean, he used the train car lines in that movie to make you feel oppressed and like you were caught in a spider's web. And the apartment buildings, which are, you know, standard Toronto like apartment buildings, but you know, he made them feel enormous. And I think that's just so impressive how he has maintained that, whether it was the scale of the ships in Arrival or the buildings and the landscapes in 2049. I think that, I mean, Dune, I don't think there's that many properties that I can think of, fantasy and science fiction, where you, I mean, this scale is unbelievable. And like that is, I mean, there's nothing quite like it because it's so far in the future. They can do things, you know, with engineering and technologically that you could never even imagine. So I think, and that's something I tweeted about Dune Messiah as well, and people were really keying in on. They were like, I really want to see this. Like, I want to see Dune Messiah. Like, I can't believe that what you're describing right now and like some of Mark Simonetti's art. I think, yeah, that's something that I think people are very interested in. I think it's something that is pushing them toward the big screen as well, as you pointed out.
Yeah, and then let's touch on those Norwegian promo trailers. So there was, yeah, a bunch of them, and like they were mostly between like 15 and 30 seconds long. But I think the biggest reveal coming out of that was that we actually got like that still image showing the Fremen warriors, which was what appeared to be on the surface of Caladan, and that ties back to that shot in the trailer that we had talked in the previous weeks, that you see, you know, Paul and Chani in the ship above, and then down you saw like the those people with Atreides flags, and here it looks like we're getting zooming in on those Fremen warriors. So Simon, let me hear your thoughts on that.
My first reaction was like, "Damn it, Johnny, you're right." What is that scene? That's the question. What is that scene, and when is that scene? It's probably, at this point, I'm pretty sure it's a dream. I'm thinking Paul has a vision. I'm sure he's going to have several visions during the film, and it could be when he first gets to Arrakis, maybe, or once he first, maybe at the end of the movie, he has a dream after he meets certain people. You know, I'm excited. I want to know what that scene is. Like, out of all the scenes that you know that are not in the novel, you're like, oh, how does that link up? Where is that? And it looks gorgeous. You know, it is Lord of the Rings in space. It is everything that I wanted from this movie. And I'm trying to find a super high res photo so I can make that like my cover photo on Facebook and everywhere else, and just write "Long live the fighters." But once again, Denis, low details. And if you look, there's blood, there's crest knives, there's everything that you would imagine. And the production, I really hope this gets nominated for like best costume designs, best set designs. It's going to be something. Like we said, don't want to sound elitist, like you said, Johnny, but seeing what we saw on the big screen makes a total difference. I don't think people are ready for what they're going to experience. And we only saw 20 minutes, 15 minutes of it.
Yeah, and we know that in the Spice Harvester scene that we saw, like Paul is having his first strong reactions to the spice. So I'm wondering, this could potentially be like when he's in the tent with Jessica, like later on in film, and he's eating a lot of spice, and he's getting that like opening up to all these different futures. That this may potentially be one of them, like we also saw with them fighting the Sardaukar warriors, because clearly that's not going to be covered in terms of actual events in this movie, but it's definitely something that he would be looking ahead. So it's interesting, like what you said, it may not necessarily be described in the book, but in the book it talks about all these different possible futures, and this is clearly one of those scenarios. Garin, what did you think about that striking image?
Yeah, I was with Simon on this one. I immediately thought this is Paul having prescient experiences, because Denis got to show that, right? You've got to tell the story of the fact that he gets these futuristic visions, and it's a conflict for him, right? So does he want to see this? What is he seeing? He's trying to figure out what he's seeing in his visions, and if maybe perhaps this is an image of the future, universal jihad, which is going all over, the various planets of that universe, the Imperium. So that was the first thought that I had, is this is maybe not in the actual narrative. This is some prescient dreams, but it's obviously very warlike with advanced, weaponry or armor, and that would make sense that this is something he's seeing in the future that's going to happen. And does he want it to happen? I wonder if that's going to play into the story.
Yeah, well, definitely to Simon's point, I had to pat myself on the back because it was so funny, because when we saw that in the theaters, like in the trailer had come out, I'd watched it like 50 times, and then we did the podcast review and really shot by shot broke it down. It was only when we went through it that way where I was like, that looks exactly the same as that other shot, because they were separated in the trailer, and a lot of times they do that, of course, to confuse you and make it seem like it's out of context, when in fact, no, that's exactly what it is. And I remember looking at the shots and zooming in, and I was like, you can see people down there like kneeling and like with their arms up and flags. I'm like, what is that all about? Like the color was similar. And then, yeah, so when this popped up in this little clip, I mean, I lost it. Like, I was like, what? Like, it's just so cool, because Denis, as a fan, as someone who's read the entire series, has interest in making Dune Messiah, he's thinking in the long game. And, someone like a Peter Berg or a David Lynch or something like that, who might have tried to make this movie or did make it, the Fede, seeing them in this context, like, that's alluding to something that is not necessarily would ever be shown in a Dune movie. And I think that's just a really powerful image. And I just know all the fans of, of the book and the series that have seen this so far have been like losing it and are really excited. Whether, this is of course a vision. Like, I think you can pretty much say that without a shadow of a doubt, because if nothing else, Paul's eyes are blue. So this is, years into the future potentially. And we know this movie's not going to last years. And they are on Caladan. I know there's been some book readers kind of like, what's that all about? And I'm not going to go into detail, but they're like, well, that kind of conflicts with this in the book. And I'm like, well, first off, it's a vision. And secondly, they could change it for the movie for whatever reason if they want to. And thirdly, maybe this vision and what he is seeing here is what causes them to make these decisions later about Caladan and who they want there and who they don't want there. So I think that's really interesting. And it looks awesome. I mean, the costumes I think are really great. And I think maybe, we have no idea, this is pure speculation, but because there's that vision that we have seen already of them fighting on the plains of Arrakeen and the worms and them in the same exact costumes, I wonder if that's in some sort of like this, if it's in the same montage, like the same dream vision sequence, potentially kind of just showing what's going to happen or what could potentially happen. And then, of course, as soon as I saw it, I had to go grab that quote where I think they're in the tent and he's talking about what he sees, this vision of this jihad, across the universe, and the banner. And I mean, it's to a T from the book. Like, it's to a T. And I think that was really exciting as well.
Okay, then going to our fourth and last story for today is the character teasers that have been coming out. So IGN has been releasing those exclusive articles. Yeah, so last week we got the Fremen, which we got to see Chani, Stilgar, and Liet Kynes. And then today we got the last part of that Path to Dune character teasers, which was the Harkonnens. So of course we got to see the Baron himself. We got to see the Beast Raban, and we finally got to see more of Peter de Vries, the Harkonnen Mentat. So let's start with you, Simon. Overall reactions to these character teasers of the Fremen and the Harkonnen.
Harkonnen ones, the only one I was really interested was Peter, because we haven't really seen him. And the Baron and Beast, I feel, were kind of like the best of those scenes that we've seen already prior. The Fremen ones, I think, like everyone else, the Leon Kind one was the one I was like, huh, interesting. And I love the last shot of Paul going, "Who are you?" to the Fremens, kind of like more teasers, and hopefully that gets people interested. Overall, great stuff. I wonder what IGN's going to do next week, because they're supposedly doing stuff until the movie hits in the theaters.
Yeah, they mentioned either weekly or bi-weekly, but I'm sure that they'll have more materials coming out. Maybe not videos, but other interviews perhaps. Johnny, what did you think of these last two waves of teasers?
I'm really liking them. I'm just excited that they're getting them out there and they're on a big platform like IGN. I think that's definitely a plus. And not only are they just dropping, it's not like they're just dropping the videos, but they do have these like full-blown articles kind of getting into the nitty-gritty of the universe and these factions and these characters. Peter, of course, was like the main attraction just because we have seen so little of him, and I think he's not going to be in the movie all that much. But we do know he's going to be in at least, now we can say, at least 3 scenes, which is good, I would say. So that's exciting. And David Dastmalchian, he's awesome. Loved him in the Suicide Squad. I've loved him in all of Denis movies, and the makeup, super impressive. Donald Mowat and his crew have just crushed it with the Harkonnen. I think they look awesome. And there's some of the music in these too, I think, assuming it is Zimmer score, and it definitely sounds like it is pretty interesting and unique too. And I'm excited to see how that's implemented. But overall, and I will say, I did read it. It is going to be every other week now. So next week we shouldn't be getting anything from IGN. And then the next Thursday we will, and then they'll take off, and then they'll do another one. And who knows what that'll be? Could just be interviews. It could be, I'm thinking maybe they might start doing like full clips, something like that, 30 seconds to a minute or something. But yeah, exciting stuff.
I think this is an interesting marketing strategy to distinguish, because to all of us fans, we know and love these characters, right? So to have them highlighted in these little teasers only gets me more excited about seeing how that character that I already know and love is going to be depicted on the screen. But it's also an interesting way for those who aren't as familiar with the books or aren't as familiar with this world. It's very clearly delineating, here are the good guys, here are the bad guys, here are the people you want to pay attention to. I think because you've got so many characters in this narrative and in this book, it requires some mental work to keep everything straight. And the design is brilliant, because you're going to clearly know when you're dealing with the Harkonnens and when you're dealing with the Atreides. It's going to be crystal clear. You're not going to doubt that. But I think it's interesting that they're kind of leading us to learn and clearly understand the differences between these characters, because they're not just going for the fan base, which are those of us right here. They're going for the world, the total addressable market here. And I think this is a really wise strategy to introduce people to these different characters in a really fun way.
Yeah, and real quick to that, another thing that we know is that these are going to be posted again tomorrow, straight from the social media accounts for Dune. So they kind of get to double dip, which is nice for as far as like exposure.
And one of the things that stood out to me, like staying on the Peter clip, like at the beginning you have the dialogue. The Duke's son and he sees too much. And like I'm wondering if they edited that from two different scenes, because it does feel like slightly different tone of voice. So I'm wondering if there's, you know, again, a bit of like teaser trickery going on there, that it's not necessarily within that context. But yeah, it's
just real quick, that made me think of another line which we hear, and I want to say it's from the Baron, where he says the Atreides will like die in darkness, or they'll die in the dark, or something to that effect. And I'm thinking that, you know, book spoiler here, but it kind of alludes to the you know, killing the power. I feel like that's probably a reference to the plot.
Yeah, and also touching on what you mentioned as well in the Liet Kynes clip, that was also another interesting one, because we haven't seen all that that much of the character in the other footage. But yeah, like I think that hints to some important points. Like we know that Paul is very alert in that scene. Like he knows that there's something more to her than like the others are noticing. And but I just love her reaction, just that like nonchalant smile and walk away, you know. Yeah, I think overall, like great to have seen this wave. I think it's they're definitely like pulling out all the stops, and I think for people who have been fans of Dune for a long time, and people who are just coming in, there's plenty to enjoy here. I guess the final thought for people who are following along closely, do you think that they've reached the point where they're showing too much? Like, I'll just anybody who wants to answer.
I don't think so.
I can say, I was going to say just that, but yeah, I don't think so. And well, not just, I don't think so. I can say for a fact, they're not showing too much. I'll leave it at that.
Tipping their toes in some glorious pumpkin spice latte.
Exactly.
Yeah, we're not going to care, you guys, when we're watching this on the IMAX screen, what you've seen before. We're going to be totally knee deep in it. So I agree with Johnny. I think obviously you can show too much, but they haven't. And I think we've got to bring in the people that are on the fence. It's those people that I remember back in the day who went to see the '84 movie. And I know this is a totally different experience, right? But they were just like, I was so confused. I didn't understand what was happening. I think we've got to show enough that people who maybe might be, you know, MCU diehards and Star Wars diehards, they've got to see that this is very different. It's a completely different type of a science fiction experience. So showing them this, showing them the images, showing them the characters, I think is a way to help them make that transition, because that's what they've got to do.
Yeah, and real quick, last thing as well, we know the IGN content, for example, now it's going to be every other week, and we don't really know what it's going to be, but they are going to be kind of pulling back. And I think part of why that is, and just another factor going forward, is the movies, the premiere is a week away now. And not only is that really exciting, but I think what they're thinking is, and what their plan is, I think, to some degree, of course, the marketing is still going to be a big factor, and this is going to be influenced by that, but the movie is going to speak for itself, like, very soon, and people are going to see it. Critics are already seeing it in the United States. They're seeing it for festival screeners, and they're going to be writing reviews and publishing those next week. The fans that are going to be in attendance, which we know for a fact that there are going to be some who, you know, are living in Italy or are in Europe and got tickets and passes, they're going to see it. They're going to be talking about it, writing reviews. And then it's going to go to TIFF, and then it's going to go to New York, and that's going to be all through September. And once those reviews are hitting, once the fans are talking about it, people are tweeting about it, Facebook, whatever, it's going to market itself. And I think, literally, you're going to be able to pull, you know, 5 out of 5 stars, 4 out of 4 stars, the pull quotes, the things that you see in the, you know, the TV spots and on posters and on the online advertisements. Like, that's really what they're going to start leaning into. And you're not going to have to show too much more, or much new stuff, at least, to highlight why you need to see the movie.
Yeah, can't wait to see all of that. So we're going to wrap up this week's show. So that was definitely exciting to cover all that was going on this week. So let's start with you, Johnny. Where can you be found?
I mean, mainly on Twitter. That's where I spend my days. You know, my first and last name, Johnny Sobczak. Also on Letterboxd, first and last name if you want to find me there. Discord, the Dune Reddit, I'm around.
Garin, where can you be found?
On Twitter at Dune Companion, and then my website. I've got lore articles and other things there, and that's dunecompanion.com.
Yeah. And Simon, where can we contact you?
Twitter and Instagram as Dowdy, so first initial and my last name.
Yeah. And this was Marcus Gabriel, and you can find me on DuneNewsNet.com as well as Dune Newsnet on Twitter and Instagram. So thank you all for joining us for this exciting episode, and we're going to have like a lot more movie news coming up next week, as well as reactions to the Venice Film Festival. Looking forward to talking to you all again on next week's Dune Talk.
We hope you've enjoyed Dune Talk. Remember to like, subscribe, and turn on notifications so you know when the next episode drops. Stay tuned to DuneNewsNet.com and add us to your social feeds. Be the first to hear breaking news and reviews.